Unbelievable moment. Cops say, "Stop resisting," to a black man, only to discover he's the chief, the shocking truth revealed at the block party. It was supposed to be a day of joy, the annual block party thrumming with laughter and music filling the streets of their vibrant neighborhood. Kids zipped around with ice cream cones melting fast, while families set up tables adorned with colorful dishes. James, the dedicated black police chief, stood amidst it all, his heart swelling with pride. He smiled and waved, soaking in the camaraderie, watching as Malik, his 16-year-old son, tossed a football with friends, their laughter a balm for his soul. But the joy was not without its weight. Recent tensions between law enforcement and the citizens loomed over everything. As James moved through the crowd, he felt the eyes of some watching him closely, uncertain of his role, embodying both protector and potential adversary. He understood those fears, his heart ached for a world that could so easily overlook the good in him. Just then, a loud shout sliced through the harmony. Two teenagers had gotten into a heated argument over a spilled drink. James's instincts kicked in. He stepped forward, ready to de-escalate. But before he could say a word, an inexperienced rookie officer rushed in, mistaking him for just another bystander. "Stop resisting," the officer barked, shocking the crowd into silence. The music faded, replaced by a breathless tension that wrapped everyone in its grip. James froze, a rush of disbelief flashing through him. He fought to remain calm. This was his community, the place he worked hard to protect every single day. And yet, standing there, a cold sweat trickled down his spine. Faces turned, eyes wide with disbelief as they processed the sheer absurdity of the moment, their police chief being treated as a suspect. Malik stood on the sidelines, his expression frozen. James's heart ached at the sight of his son, grappling with the reality of a world that often failed to appreciate who his father truly was. James felt the heat rising in his chest, not out of fear for himself but for Malik. The boy deserved to see his father as a protector, not just another black man in a uniform. The crowd murmured, the weight of collective history hanging heavy in the air. Would James confront this ignorance? Could he turn a moment of public humiliation into an opportunity for change? As the officer gradually realized his mistake, the shift in energy palpable, James took a breath. His time to act was now. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the officer's gaze turned to James, realization washed over the crowd like a wave. Silence pervaded the atmosphere, but James could feel the collective heartbeat of the neighborhood, a mix of confusion, understanding, and the simmering hope for change. In that heavy silence, hope flickered, and the moment felt electric, a turning point just waiting to ignite. Every face reflected a story, their thoughts poised on the edge of acceptance and transformation. Would they rally behind their chief? Would they understand that beneath the uniform was a man dedicated to serving and protecting them? The stakes had risen, and with them, the chance to rewrite a narrative long overdue for change. How would it unfold in a world that constantly tested their resilience? James lifted his chin, ready to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He saw Malik's eyes wide with shock and confusion, and in that instant, he knew he had to set the example not just for his son but for everyone watching. He could feel the weight of history and the rare chance to shift perceptions heavy on his shoulders. "Everyone, please listen," he finally managed to say, his voice steady but firm. "I am your police chief, James Lawson. There's no need for fear or anger. This situation can be resolved peacefully." The words flowed from him, a bridge of understanding between two worlds. James watched the officer's face transform from confusion to embarrassment, and the murmur in the crowd grew louder. Some faces softened, recognizing him as their leader and not just a figure in a uniform. Others, though, still held skepticism. James could sense the division, and it urged him to dig even deeper. With a slow, deliberate step forward, he addressed the rookie officer, trying to rein in the tension that clung to the air. "I appreciate your intentions to protect. But knowing your community is just as crucial. Mistakes happen, and that's okay. Let us take this moment to learn." The officer nodded, embarrassment flooding his cheeks, but he remained tense. James reached out a hand that lingered in the space between them, hoping to extend a gesture of reconciliation. His heart raced as he extended grace, a challenging act in a society that often seemed unforgiving. People began to step closer, eyes focused on the exchange. Parents shifted so they could capture the moment on their phones, but more importantly, they gathered to witness the strength that could bloom from vulnerability. They wanted to see this change in real time and how it could ripple through the community. "Today, we celebrate our neighborhood, don't we?" James said, turning to the crowd, feeling their energy shift from uncertainty to something more akin to hope. "Crime affects us all. Misunderstandings affect us all. What matters is how we address them and how we come together as one." Malik began to move forward, pushed by an invisible force that yearned to bridge the gap created by fear. James's heart swelled as he watched his son step into the light, the youth embodying a promise and a plea for unity. "Dad, it's okay," Malik called out, his voice cracking slightly but carrying strength. "We're all here to help each other." Tears burned the corners of James's eyes. This was the vision he had for his son, a world where justice didn't mean conflict but rather connection. The murmurs in the crowd began to morph into cheers of agreement, voices blending into a chorus of willing hearts eager for change, and then, out of nowhere, a woman stepped forward from the crowd, a longtime resident known for her fierce dedication to the community. "This isn't just about you, Chief," she said, her voice rising. "It's about all of us. We need to listen, learn, and grow together." The ripple effect was undeniable. Others began to share their experiences, opening up about misunderstandings with police, dropping their defenses, and fostering a conversation that had long been buried. For the first time in ages, James felt the hope that had been so fleeting start to grow. As laughter resurfaced, harmonizing with celebrations in the background, James turned to the officer who had initially mishandled the situation. "Let this be a lesson for all of us," he said, a spark of determination igniting within him. "This is just the beginning of a new narrative." But as he looked into the faces of his neighbors, some hopeful, some skeptical, he understood that something important was shifting. Could they truly bridge the gap together? Would lingering doubts fade into trust? The road ahead felt long, but the spark of change was undeniable. In that moment, James realized the power of vulnerability and acceptance could heal more than he ever imagined. But would it be enough to change hearts and minds? The determination to see it through pulsed in his veins as he took a deep breath. "Let us create this together," he said, his voice echoing into the warm evening air. "Are you with me?" But even as he spoke, a figure lingered at the edge of the crowd, watching intently, their eyes cloaked with shadows of doubt. Who were they, and what would their presence mean for this newfound unity? James felt the atmosphere shift as the figure at the edge of the crowd remained still, a silent observer amidst the unexpected wave of unity building before him. The cheers and laughter faded momentarily as his own curiosity tugged at him. Who was this person? Did they represent a skepticism that ran deeper than he could see? The crowd began digesting what they had just witnessed, and Malik caught sight of James's distraction. "Dad, is everything okay?" he asked, concern etching lines on his young face. James offered a quick nod, but inside, his stomach twisted. There was still work to be done. As he turned back to the crowd, he saw individuals exchanging glances, a mix of hope and doubt layered between them. It was a tricky balance. This was a moment of potential, but how fragile it felt. He took a step closer to the crowd, trying to read their expressions. Some wore smiles, while others still clung to the remnants of wariness. Suddenly, the figure broke free from the shadows. It was a woman, older than Malik but young enough to be vibrant in her defiance. Her name was Rose, and James had known her for years, her loyal spirit a staple in their tight-knit community. But now, as she approached, her expression swallowed any sense of kinship. "What are you doing?" she asked, a tremor of disbelief lacing her voice. "You think just because you talk about peace and unity, it's going to change things overnight?" James held her gaze, trying to steady his own heartbeat. "No, Rose, I know it won't. But we have to start somewhere," he replied, the sincerity of his words hanging in the air. "You think they'll believe you?" she shot back, gesturing to a group of wary onlookers. "You wear a badge. They see you as part of the problem." James's heart ached at the truth of her words, but he refused to be broken by them. "I am part of the problem, but I also want to be part of the solution," he said, the emotion bubbling to the surface. His voice was stronger than it felt, fueled by something more profound than mere duty. The crowd shifted again, some stepping forward, eager to be part of this ongoing dialogue while others hung back, frowning at the tension. James took another step toward Rose, drawing a bead on her passion. "I know I messed up in the past. But this is a chance for all of us to learn and change together." "But that's just it," she said, her voice thickening. "It's too hard to trust a system that has failed us so many times before." "Maybe," James replied, "but if you don't give it a chance, it will never change. We can't stay stuck in the past, Rose. Not when we have the chance to create something different." A tense silence hovered between them. It felt as though the world was holding its breath, just as Malik looked anxiously between the two, unsure of how to help mend the rift. Then a voice from the crowd broke through the stillness. "She's right," someone shouted, emboldened. "What difference does one moment make? Can you promise us things will truly change?" That question hung heavy, and James felt as if it were a blade poised at his chest. Could he promise them real change? The weight of responsibility hung over him like a storm cloud, and his mind raced. He understood that words were only words without action, but how could he bring to life the promise he now felt so strongly? As he opened his mouth to respond, he saw Malik step forward again, his eyes fierce, caught between wanting to defend his father and needing to validate his community's pain. James could sense a turning point looming ahead. This was a make-or-break moment. "Please," Malik said, voice steady, "what happened back there today was wrong. But we're here now. Together. We can do this, can't we?" In that moment, the crowd's murmurs rose, a collective inhalation of tension and uncertainty, their eyes searching for hope in James's answer. The spark of change flickered, yet that familiar figure in the shadows weighed heavily on him still, a reminder that this was only the beginning. Would this moment possibly unite a community once fractured? Or would it echo the many promises broken before it? James's heart raced as the crowd leaned in, waiting for his next words to shape their shared future. Then he noticed the flash of anger in Rose's eyes. Was that fear for the future? Or perhaps a flicker of understanding? "Change doesn't come easy, I know," he said softly, grappling with the pieces of a plan that felt both daunting and necessary. "But I will stand accountable. I will fight for you, for us." Was that enough to bridge the gap? The answer felt elusive, just as the rustle of leaves signaled an incoming storm. Could he truly lead a community toward healing amidst its deepest wounds? As the air thickened with expectation, the answer seemed to hang over them, unspoken yet urgent. What lay ahead remained unknown, but James realized that the journey to unity had only just begun. James's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Hope flickered in the crowd, battling doubt. He could see it in their eyes, a yearning for change mixed with a deep-seated fear of being let down again. Would his promise to fight for them make any real difference? Malik's grip tightened on his father's arm, the young boy's face a mix of courage and concern. "You can do it, Dad," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the murmurs around them. For a moment, James felt buoyed by that faith. But as he looked at the crowd, he was reminded that faith without a plan was merely a dream. Listen, he began, searching for the right words. I know it's going to take more than promises. We'll need real actions behind these words. He paused, scanning their weary faces. Real conversations. Healing won't happen overnight, but we can start today. We can form a community advisory board where all our voices, yours, are heard. Rose stepped closer, skepticism etched on her features. And who will lead that? You? Someone with a badge? How can we trust a system that has never had our interests in mind? The tension was palpable as James took in her words. He understood the weight of her accusation. You're right to question, he said gently. Trust is earned, and I'll work hard to earn it. Maybe I won't lead it, but I'll be part of it. If you'll help me. Her eyes softened slightly, but doubt still flickered there. You can't fix what you don't understand. The pain runs deep. James nodded, feeling the truth of her words. Then let us talk about it. Let us open that dialogue. With the story of every single person who has been hurt, we can rebuild together. The crowd remained mixed, some heads nodding, while others remained skeptical. A man in the back shouted, if we share our stories, what will change? We've shared enough grief. We want justice. A deep silence enveloped them for a heartbeat, and then Malik interjected, justice is important, but isn't unity the first step? Just like Dad said, we can stand together and push for real change together. His words surprised James, who felt a surge of pride for his son. The moment felt electric, a thread weaving through them. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could stand shoulder to shoulder, transforming hurt into hope. A woman approached the front. Her face was lined with weariness but lit with determination. If we do this, we do it on our terms. We lay out what we want from you, from the city. You have to listen. Yes. Rose the chorus of voices, a swell of agreement rippling through the crowd. James felt the energy shift. Okay, he replied, heart racing, caught up in the momentum. Let us create a list. Let's write down our expectations. I want you to hold me accountable. I'm not asking for blind trust, I'm asking for a chance to prove that I mean what I say. As the ideas began to flow, people stepped forward, one by one, sharing their thoughts. James felt the weight on his chest lift slightly as participation surged. They were sharing hopes and fears, aspirations for a future that felt achingly possible. But between the hopeful chatter, he still felt that figure lurking at the edge of the crowd, the unyielding specter of doubt that Rose had represented. Remember, he said, raising his voice above the noise. This is just a beginning, it requires all of us. But we must also be ready to listen, to learn. We will face resistance, not everyone will agree with us. The crowd's murmurs escalated into a flurry of muted conversations, and the earlier doubt started to blend into an undercurrent of possibility. Yet he sensed the tension hadn't fully dissipated, that the path ahead was fraught with challenges beyond their control. As they moved forward, creating a list of demands and expectations, James felt his heart thump. He knew they were just stepping into unknown territory. Would the community be able to truly unite amidst their fears? The energy in the air shifted once again, now swirling with potential, yet carrying the storm clouds of unresolved issues. Would they find the strength to address those deeper pains? Together? The crowd's trust hung by a thread, and as James looked out at the faces, he realized this was only the beginning of their climb toward healing. Underneath it all, a deeper question nagged at him: what if they couldn't carry each other through the struggles ahead? Uncertainty loomed large as he turned to Malik, who looked back at him, a gentle reminder that his son believed in their cause. Let us do this, James said quietly, but a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that real trials lay ahead. For every step taken toward unity, a greater conflict waited. How would they navigate the storms that threatened to break them apart once more? The journey to solidarity was just beginning, and James could only wonder if it could withstand the gale to come. The energy in the crowd surged as they moved from words to action, yet tension lingered in the air like a thick fog. James could hear snippets of whispered conversations, doubt mixing with hope, each person grappling with their feelings about the change ahead. "Can we really do this?" a woman muttered, her brow furrowed, glancing at her neighbor, who simply shrugged, eyes darting around uncertainly. James felt that familiar knot in his stomach begin to twist tighter. He took a step forward, willing to push through. "We can," he asserted, his voice steady. "We will do this together." Malik tugged on his father's sleeve, pulling James's attention. "Dad, can I help?" His eagerness was palpable, his small frame a symbol of the next generation's hope. "Of course, son," James said, kneeling down to meet his eyes. "Your voice matters just as much as anyone's here." Malik beamed with excitement, quickly scanning the crowd as if searching for his first challenge. "Let us make sure everyone knows they can share their stories," he said, his head nodding enthusiastically. James couldn't help but smile, encouraged by his son's enthusiasm. It was a bright spot in the murky waters of uncertainty. "That's it. Let us call for everyone who wants to share to step forward. We'll find a way to make time for every voice." As people hesitated, James seized the moment, raising his hands to signal for quiet. "We need to hear from you. Who here wants to share a story?" Slowly, individuals began to step out of the crowd, one by one, voices trembling but growing in volume. They shared stories of loss and pain, moments where they felt unheard, showcasing the very heart of their community's struggles. With each story, James felt a spark ignite within him. It was more than just words, it was a commitment. The raw emotion surrounding him was intoxicating, transforming fear into strength. This was the foundation they needed. Then, a voice rose above the others, firm yet trembling. "I lost my brother to the system." A young man stepped forward, tears cascading down his cheeks. "He was innocent, and it feels like nobody cared. If we're finally heard, maybe he didn't die for nothing." The raw truth of his words cut like a knife. The crowd fell silent, absorbing the weight of shared sorrow. James felt his heart race, sensing a turning point. This was it, the moment they could pivot from grief to action. "Thank you for sharing that," James said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Stories connect us. We're here for you all. Together, let us make sure your brother's name is not forgotten." Malik looked up, wide-eyed, understanding the gravity of what was unfolding. "Can we make shirts or something?" he suggested, full of youthful optimism. "So people don't forget?" James chuckled softly through his emotion, a wave of warmth spreading through him at his son's thoughtfulness. "That's a brilliant idea. Let us put a plan together. Unity, remembrance, it all matters." And as the crowd began discussing ideas, laughter and chatter intermingled with tears. Hope blossomed in that horticulture of shared grief and resilience. James felt himself wrapped in a cocoon of determination and strength, thinking that maybe this time, change was within reach. But then, just as the excitement peaked, a familiar voice broke through the moment. It was Rose, her brows knitted together in concern. "But is it enough?" she questioned, her skepticism still echoing in every heart. "What happens when we step outside this circle? Will they listen then?" The air grew heavy again, the energy shifting from hope back to doubt. James felt his heart sink. Did they have what it would take to rise above the skepticism of those outside this moment? Would the world react as positively as this crowd was? Malik squeezed his father's arm, silently asking for reassurance. James spoke, though uncertainty tinged his voice. "We'll make it enough. We have to." As he looked around, he sensed an unshakable resolve beginning to build, yet the question lingered, could this hope withstand the reality waiting beyond the crowd? They were standing on the edge of transformation, and James could feel the storm brewing as he realized this journey was only just beginning. What awaited them outside the circle of unity they were forging? The energy in the air shifted again as Rose's words settled like heavy stones among the crowd. Doubt spread, and James could see it reflected in the faces around him. People began exchanging glances, their previous determination waning. He felt a fire inside him flicker, fighting against that cold wave of uncertainty. "Guys, listen." James raised his voice, trying to battle the rising doubts. "We have each other here. This is just the start. We're united, and when we speak as one, we become impossible to ignore." A couple of heads nodded, though others remained unconvinced. He could sense the flickering flames of hope struggling against the tendrils of fear kneeling at their door. He turned to Malik, his son's small hand still clutching his arm. "Let us show them how we can reach outside this circle. We won't just speak, we'll take action." Malik's eyes sparkled, reflecting an idea that had yet to form. "Like a march or something?" "Yes. A march," James exclaimed, the spark reigniting within him. "We make our stories visible. We walk in honor of those we've lost and demand that our voices be part of the conversation." The crowd began to stir, whispers growing into a gentle roar. Some expressed doubt, while others felt the heat of inspiration. "Is that really going to make a difference?" came a voice from the back. "What if we're ignored?" James knew the question was valid. He felt the weight of it hanging heavy in the air. "But what if we are seen?" He paused, searching for the right words. "What if we shine a light that can't be dimmed? We're more than just stories, we're a community. Together, we can't be brushed aside." Another voice chimed in. "My brother was taken before he could find his voice. We can do this for him and everyone else." That sentiment sparked something in others, and he watched as people began sharing names and stories of loved ones lost. Each name became a thread that tied them closer. James felt the warmth of shared sorrow becoming fuel for their fire. "Yes. Every step we take will be for them," he affirmed, tears pricking at the edges of his eyes. "For every injustice faced, we will stand. Each name matters. They're part of us." As voices rose in agreement, James stepped back to let the buzz grow. Malik tugged at his sleeve again, curiosity burning in his bright eyes. "Do you think people outside will care?" The question hung between them, heavy and ringing with uncertainty. It had clawed its way into the heart of what they were building. James looked down at his son's innocent face, mixed with excitement and concern. "We'll make them care. Together we'll share who we are and why we matter." A new excitement coursed through the crowd, transforming doubt into action. People started brainstorming ideas where to walk, what signs to hold, even songs to sing. A spirit of unity began to weave through each suggestion, a patchwork quilt of voices growing louder. James felt alive in that moment, adrenaline fueling his courage. There, among them, the weight on his heart eased. They were more than mere individuals, they were a collective, ready to shout their existence to the world, but as they began discussing logistics, the lights from nearby police cars began to flicker in the distance, cutting through the gathering dusk. The crowd fell silent again as heads turned toward the source of the glow. Whispers of dread slithered through the group. James felt his stomach tighten, the battle for hope facing an unsought adversary. "Are they coming for us?" someone asked, fear lacing the question. "I don't know," James admitted quietly, a rush of uncertainty swirling within him. "But if they're here, we have to stay strong. We're not backing down now." Malik squeezed his hand tightly, a reflection of shared anxiety. James took a deep breath, reminding himself that they had each other. Together, they would stand firm. But as the lights drew closer, a new tension filled the air. Would they turn their hope into fear? Could their unity survive the impending reality that lay waiting? The night was far from over, and James could feel destiny approaching. Fast. What awaited them as the world looked on? The police cars rolled to a stop, their blue and red lights flashing against the growing darkness, casting odd shadows over anxious faces. James could see officers stepping out with determined expressions, some whispering into their radios. A palpable tension hung in the air, thickening around them like fog. He felt Malik's grip tighten on his hand, the boy's small palm hot against his own. "Dad, what if they don't want us to march?" The question came out barely above a whisper. James looked down at Malik, his heart aching. "We're showing them who we are," James replied, searching for calm in his own voice. "We're not causing trouble, we're raising our voices. That's our right." Amidst the crowd, some people began to stand a little taller, squaring their shoulders as uncertainty turned into defiance. "They can't stop us," came a voice. "We have a right to be heard." With those words, a ripple of agreement swept through the group. More and more faces reflected determination. Hundreds of breaths united, filling the chilly air with a shared resolve that felt like electricity. James took a step forward, raising both hands to catch their attention. "Listen, everyone. If we are going to do this, we need to stand strong. Together." The crowd responded, voices melding together in unity, slowly building anthem-like strength. "Together." They chanted, feeling invincible, wrapped in the comfort of shared purpose, but as they stood their ground, one of the officers began walking towards them, his expression unreadable. The world around James held its breath, suspended in that moment. "Stay calm," he said, though he could feel the tension gnawing at him. Malik looked up at him, eyes wide, and asked, "What's happening?" The officer reached the front of the crowd and unexpectedly, he held up a hand to signal silence. The sound faded, as if the world itself was listening. "We just want to talk," he said firmly, but there was a softness beneath his tone. "I'm Officer Daniels. We're here to make sure everyone stays safe." James felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Safety? Or control? "We're not here to cause problems," he asserted, trying to gauge if they were finally being taken seriously. Officer Daniels nodded slowly. "We get that. We've seen marches before, people voicing their rights. So, what's your goal?" James could almost hear his heart echoing in the silence. He looked around, every pair of eyes on him, filled with expectation. "We want to walk for our lost loved ones. We want our stories told, we demand our voices matter." The officer's gaze softened further, something almost adjusting in his stance. "We understand that. But if you march, you'll need to follow certain safety guidelines." The atmosphere shifted. The crowd was tense, but a few murmurs erupted. Guidelines? What did that mean? James pressed his lips together, weighing his options. Then he remembered the flame in Malik's eyes. "As long as we can march," he replied, determination creeping back into his voice. "We'll march for those we've lost, for a better future. We deserve to be heard." Officer Daniels seemed to contemplate that for a moment. With an almost imperceptible nod, he stepped back, signaling to other officers. "All right, we'll provide an escort. But keep it peaceful." As the crowd erupted into cheers, James felt a wave of triumph wash over him, but fear lingered just beneath the surface. "We can do this," he whispered to Malik. Malik's smile bloomed wide, a beacon of hope. As they began to organize, James realized the stakes had risen. They had managed to establish a path forward. But could they maintain this unity? Would the officers support them all the way, or would the unexpected emerge, challenging everything they had built? The night carried on and uncertainty loomed. Would their march become a chorus of hope, or an echo of turmoil? As the cheers of the crowd filled the air, a strange mix of exhilaration and dread fluttered in James's chest. The streetlights flickered overhead, painting the gathering in hues of yellow and gray, illuminating faces filled with resolve and fear. He could see many clenching their fists, determined to stand their ground as he and Malik moved to the front, their path illuminated by the police escort. "Stay close to me, okay?" James murmured to Malik, who nodded, his small hand still secure in his father's. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of their mission affixed to James's heart. He glanced around, trying to absorb the moment. This wasn't just a march, it was a lifeline, a stand against silence and invisibility. The police cars lined up like a barricade, lights swirling in a kaleidoscope of colors, an odd contrast to the somber reason for their gathering. A few officers placed themselves deliberately ahead of the march, creating a buffer between the protesters and the unnerving sounds of the city beyond. Some people in the crowd murmured cautiously, their eyes darting between the cops and one another, unsure whether the atmosphere was one of protection or surveillance. As they began walking, chanting grew in power. "Black Lives Matter" rang out loud and proud, echoing through the streets, drawing the attention of sleepy neighborhoods and curious bystanders. With every shout, James felt the air grow thick with energy. It was cathartic, liberating, each voice weaving together, promising solidarity in their shared pain. But doubt nibbled at the edges of his mind. What would happen if things turned chaotic? Malik tugged at his hand, pulling James back to the present. "Look, Dad. People are joining us." The boy pointed towards a group of young teens emerging from a nearby block, their faces lit with enthusiasm. One boy held a makeshift sign made of cardboard that simply read, "We matter." A small smile crept onto James's face. Encouragement surged within him like a flame stoked by the wind. The movement was growing. They weren't alone. They were part of something bigger, greater than any of them could grasp, a moment that could spark change. But as they rounded a corner, the sound of shuffling feet and murmuring voices approached, causing James's heart to race. A countergroup, a handful of individuals wielding different signs, their faces steeled with defiance, stood on the opposite sidewalk. The words they shouted were harsh, filled with anger and hostility. James felt Malik's grip tighten again, confusion etching deeper into his small brow. "Let us not engage," James urged Malik quietly, pushing forward, steering him away from the provocation. A few others turned away or faltered, anxiety rippling through the crowd. Then, out of nowhere, chaos exploded. A young woman swept past James, her voice cutting through the air. "Keep it peaceful," she yelled at the other group. She was met with a flare of conflict as the opposing faction grew louder, taunting and jeering. "Stop this. It's just noise," one shouted, while another pushed against the tide of marchers. James felt that familiar fear creep back in, his mind racing. This is not how it was meant to go. His stomach knotted as officers turned to confront this new tension, commands flying about how to maintain control. Then he spotted Officer Daniels further back, grim-faced as he communicated with his team. It felt surreal, everything they fought for, and now this. What if this fractured their movement? What if it turned violent? A sudden crash echoed, a sign falling, voices exploding in an uproar. The delicate fabric of their unity fluttered under the weight of discord. James's heart pounded in his ears. "Dad!" Malik shouted, fear coloring his voice, and in that moment, everything froze. The question hung in the air, heavy and looming. Could they turn back? Could they still become the voices they needed to be? "Hold your ground," James called out as he held Malik tighter, desperation fueling his next move. The march had become a battleground for ideals, and he had to protect the reality they were fighting for. The uncertainty clawed at him, and as James faced the chaos erupting around him, his gaze locked onto Malik's wide, frightened eyes. What happens now? He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, his next choice critical. As the tension simmered and threats loomed, he realized this was more than a question of marching, it was about survival itself. Would they stand tall, or would the divide tear them apart? In the thick of the urgent chaos, James felt a surge of adrenaline and fear, a cocktail that twisted in his gut. He glanced around, the faces of protesters and counter-protesters blurring into a mosaic of emotion, uncertainty dripping from the air like thick humidity. In every heartbeat, he felt the weight of the crowd's faith resting solely on him. He cleared his throat, willing his voice to rise above the cacophony. Everyone, listen. He shouted, his pulse roaring in the background. Let us stay calm. We're powerful together, this is our moment. He saw some faces turn toward him, startled but hopeful, their eyes searching for reassurance. But the violence threatened to eclipse the message they carried, fluttering dangerously close to losing momentum. Malik tugged on his shirt, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. Dad, I don't like this. It's scary. I know, buddy, James replied softly, his hands squeezing Malik's reassuringly. Just remember why we're here. Think about all the people we're standing up for. Focus on that. An officer stepped forward, a silhouette against the swirling lights of police cars, hands up in a universal gesture of peace. Everyone, we need to keep this peaceful. Move back. Everyone stay where you are. His voice, though commanding, was laced with strain. James watched the tension build, like a rubber band stretched too thin, ready to snap. Just moments later, a woman from the counter-protest group yelled something incendiary that ignited the crowd. Her words shot like arrows, jabbing at already frayed nerves. It was like a match to tinder. Bodies surged, voices clashed, and suddenly, the fragile moment they shared was engulfed in confusion. No! James screamed, stepping toward the chaos, heart thundering as if it might burst. This isn't what we're about. Listen to the cry for justice, not the anger. We are better than this. His plea seemed to reach a few, but others remained unmoved, caught up in the emotions of the moment. Without warning, Malik was pulled slightly to the side, a hand gripping his shoulder. James's stomach dropped as he whipped around, ready to protect his son. To his relief, another protester, a young woman with fierce determination in her eyes, had stepped in front of Malik. I got him. We'll stay together. She assured, her voice steady. It was a simple act of solidarity that flickered warmth through James's heart, reminding him of the intertwined humanity in their struggle. As the conflict escalated, a few people in James's group began to shout back, retaliating against the taunting words from across the street. The balance began to sway. Stay unified. James called again, uncertainty creeping back into his veins. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed, and a sign fell near where Malik stood. James felt the air catch in his throat, instinct screaming at him to draw his son close and shield him from the impending storm. The place teetered on a knife's edge, chaos and clarity entwined. A woman's voice broke through the tumult, strident and clear. We're not here to fight. We're here for justice. James turned to see her, a fierce advocate pushing through the crowd, waving her hands for calm, urging the crowd to breathe and refocus. Look at us. She commanded, and for a moment, many in the crowd hesitated to listen. When did our cause become about shouting others down? James felt hope flicker. Could this be the moment the march transformed? Would they redirect the anger into something constructive? But just as he thought things might stabilize, a police officer shouted directions, and the words crowd control rang ominously in the air. It felt like a warning note, a threat that fanned the flames of unrest. Stay where you are. The officer yelled again, and the tension was palpable, like charged air before a lightning storm. James turned to Malik, at a loss. Whatever happens, I need you to remember this. We are here for a purpose. He steeled himself, feeling every ounce of strength drain but trying to mask the fear. Would they find unity in the face of chaos, or was their cause now slipping through their fingers? The streets buzzed with uncertainty, James's gaze locked deep with Malik's, both of them bracing for whatever came next. As they held on to each other, they grappled with a single question that loomed as large as the crowd itself: where would they go from here? The tension crackled like electricity in the air as James stood resilient, anchoring his son against the chaos that ebbed and flowed around them. It felt as though the very essence of their mission was teetering on the edge of collapse. Could they truly remain united? Each heartbeat echoed the urgency of the moment. When had their demonstration for justice devolved into a potential skirmish? Listen to me. James bellowed, his voice slicing through the clamor, desperate to reclaim the narrative. This isn't about them. It's about us and our lives, our stories. We march for healing, not hatred. Slowly, some of the crowd turned to him, eyes wide with a mixture of acknowledgement and fear. Could they still channel their pain into something productive? Then, from the edge of their group, a familiar figure emerged. Malone, a respected elder in their community, moved toward James with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the turmoil around them. "James, this is not the way. Remember, we are stronger together, not louder in anger." His voice, steady and wise, wrapped around the crowd like a warm embrace. "Exactly," James replied, picking up on Malone's soothing energy. "We're not here to provoke. We're here to uplift. Let us honor every name, every story harnessed in our hearts, and shine a light on the injustice." Malone nodded, raising his arms to call for quiet. The crowd began to reflect, doubt momentarily vanishing, replaced with a hushed introspection. As people absorbed James's words and Malone's presence, the anger blurred into the background, melting under the glow of hope rekindled. Malik, emboldened by the moment's shift, piped up, "We're not just a march. We're a family. And families support each other." His voice rang true, a testament to the unity they so desperately sought. The onlookers around them began to nod in agreement, faces becoming no longer just masks of fear but beacons of solidarity. A woman standing nearby held up a sign reading, "We are not invisible." With that rallying cry, others snatched up their placards, raising them high to emphasize the power of their collective truth. Noticing the shift, Officer Daniels approached, lowering his voice as he addressed the marchers. "We want you to voice your demands peacefully, and we are here to protect your right to be heard." It was a tentative step toward understanding, and James seized that opportunity. The energy around them had changed, walls began to crumble. "Thank you, Officer Daniels," he said, allowing a moment of gratitude to settle amid the uncertainty. "But it's time for action, for clarity. We need to hear what this community wants." As murmurs ignited among the crowd, individuals began sharing their long-ignored experiences, stemming from fear, distrust, and trauma. James felt each voice envelop him, infusing the movement with undeniable strength. Soon, the collective voices birthed ideas: demands for community policing reform, programs to amplify community concerns, and creating open dialogues with law enforcement. As the requests began to flow, tears glimmered in eyes across the crowd, and James felt a ripple of determination strengthen in their bond. "Let us take this momentum to City Hall. We can set up meetings to share our unified vision." Malik shouted, his youthful spirit elevating hope anew. "Yes." Came the chants, replaced by the residual knots of past grievances. Smiles replaced tense expressions as the heart of the community, once weighed down by sorrow, began to pulse with renewed vigor. As they prepared to march again, this time with purpose and direction, James turned to Malik, squeezing his shoulder. "Look at what we can accomplish, together. This is just the beginning." But as they set out, moving deeper into the night, glimmers of doubt still danced at the edges of their minds. Would the love they had cultivated in this moment stand against the storms to come? Though uncertainty lingered, the spark of change coursed through them. With hands clasped in solidarity and hearts sown from resilience, James realized that each footfall resonated with some buried hope, bridging the wounds of the past with the promise of tomorrow. As they crossed the street toward City Hall, James felt the crowd uplift him, each person's resolve steadily creating a wave of momentum. What would happen next was still unknown, but there was one thing he was sure of: they would fight together. They would strive for a future woven from unity, love, and unbreakable connection. And just like that, James knew not only had they created an inspiring moment, but they were inching toward an exhilarating dawn. A dawn where they were more than just residents or officers, they were family, a community unafraid to demand their rightful place in the heart of change. This was their moment together. Now, as you finish this emotional journey with James and Malik, I urge you, subscribe immediately to the channel. You need to stay updated and not miss more exclusive stories that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now, and help feed this algorithm. Your support is what makes this platform flourish. Comment below your feelings about this powerful ending. I want to hear your reactions. And don't wait not even one more second, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Remember, true fans understand how important it is to support the channel and keep this momentum alive.